Yo, what is up guys, it is me Blast and today I am back with another video. So today we'll be taking a look at AMD's new RX 470 and is it viable for the budget Indian gamer. Now you guys might have seen a lot of talks about it being the 1080p sweet spot, so let's see if it is so in India. The RX 470 launched for around 16,000 rupees, that's the quoted price, but you can find it for about 17,000 with online retailers like mdcomputers.com or amazon.in. So first of all, let's have a rundown of the GPU specs, I mean the graphics card specs. So yeah, there's a difference between GPU and a graphic card and a video card. Actually the graphic card and the video card are the same, but the GPU is the actual chip sitting inside the graphic card. Now it is based on the new 14nm FinFET architecture. That means AMD managed to fit in a large amount of processors within just like 14 nanometers, so that's it. So it just increases the number of processors per area. The RX 470 has the same motherboard as the RX 480s, but with just 4 compute units less. Like the RX 480 launched with about 36 compute units and it has been reduced to 32 compute units in the RX 470, thus reducing the number of effective stream processors from 2304 to 2048, as one compute unit has around 64 stream processors, not around but exactly 64 stream processors. Now it is like, yeah, it is just a cut down version of the RX 480, but it matches the, like, not matches, but it is just a little bit less, like 5 or 10 frames behind the RX 470 in some of the games. So it really depends on the card which you're buying and the memory clocks at which you're running. Now yeah, let's get back to the specs. It has a 256-bit memory bus size, a 6.6 Gbps memory clock and a 4 GB DDR5 VRAM with a core clock of 926 MHz and a boost clock of 1206 MHz. So let me just explain this all to you in just simple layman's term. So say for example there's a lake with a pipe or a boring or whatever you want to call it, with a pipe going to some place, we don't know where. So the size of the lake that is can be like, if I take an analogy, it can be compared to the 4 GB of DDR5 VRAM, whereas the size of the tunnel can be compared to the memory bus size, that is 256-bit. So the larger the size of the tunnel, the more water can flow through the tunnel, and the water is equivalent to the instructions you're giving, or the speed, not the speed but the instructions you're giving. So as more water can flow through the tunnel, faster will be your transport of water, that is faster will be your computing speed. Also the memory clock, that is the 6 Gbps memory clocks, defines the speed of the water running through the tunnel. So the higher the speed of the water and the larger the size, the faster your GPU will work. So yeah, that's it. Now the core clock is basically the speed at which your chipset is running, the Polaris 10 chipset is running. So the core clock is at about 926 MHz and it can push up to 1206 MHz under certain heavy loads. Also, you can't compare these core clocks and boost clocks across generations, because you can take my graphics card right now, the H7770, it has the same core clock as this one, around 800 or 900, I don't know, I do not remember specifically, but it has around 926 MHz, the core clock is 926 MHz or somewhere around that. And this graphic card sucks. Like, I am going to buy the RX 470, but my HD7770 graphic card sucks, so you really can't compare the core clocks across generations. So now let's take a look at the benchmarks at 1080p. Thanks to Tom's Hardware for this. Now we are taking a look at the actual Singularity benchmarks in DirectX 12, and the RX 470 manages about 41.4 FPS, just a tad behind the GTX 970. Now we take a look at the Battlefield 4 benchmarks in DirectX 11 at the 1080p Ultra preset, and it gets about 64.6 FPS, which is playable, and but it lags like about 10 FPS behind 480 and around, how much is that, 20 FPS behind the GTX 970. So yeah, there is a bit of a big difference there, but that's all you can really expect for the price at which you're getting it. Benchmarks of Doom and in Vulkan at 1080p ultra quality preset, it gets about 108 FPS, which is very playable in my opinion. Like, anything above 60 FPS is playable in my opinion. So it gets around 108 FPS, which is higher than the GTX 1060 6GB variant at 1080p. I mean, the RX 470s and the 480s, the new RX line, really shines in like the Vulkan and the DirectX 12 API, which is I mean good. I mean, I'm mainly gonna be playing Battlefield 1, and I hope it comes out with DirectX 12. I mean, it is coming out with DirectX 12, and I hope it also has support for Vulkan, so I can get better FPS. And you can see the GTX 970, the 4GB variant, is at about 105 frames per second. I mean, that is like, if you can match the GTX 970 still, that's a good thing, because you can play the last gen games very well, and the new generation that's gonna be like the coming games, you can play them at around 1080p, and you're gonna be just fine. I mean, most of the games nowadays will come in like will come with support for DirectX 12 and Vulkan, so you can just enable them and get like this beautiful FPS, which is very good. Now let's take a look at the power consumption. So the idle power consumption here is at about 16 watts, which is I mean, it is pretty good. Like, it is about the same level as the RX 480 and about the same level as the GTX 980. So yeah, it's not gonna be too heavy on your electricity bills or stuff. So yeah, and at max, let's take a look at the power consumption at max, like while gaming. So it is at about 144 watts, which is pretty good in my opinion, because you can see the 980 199, the R9380X is for 190, and the RX 470 is faster than the R9380X, so that really says a lot. I mean, this generations of graphic card has come a really long way from the last generation one, and the GTX 970 fits about 171 watts, which is okay in my opinion. Like, at that time it would have been good, but right now with the RX 470 out and the RX 480 out, it's not that much of a big deal. Also, you can see the RX 470 and the 480 have a gap of about 20 watts, but like a frame rate difference of just about 10 or 5 FPS. So I mean, it's gonna render the RX 480 obsolete in India if you, because of the price point, actually, because it's just 10 or 5 frames per second lower than the RX 480, and like about how many rupees? That's around like 6,000 7,000 rupees cheaper than the RX 480. Yeah, so it's really gonna render it obsolete unless you guys have like a lot of money or stuff. So that is it. Now I think this card is a really good card for 1080p gaming in India right now, because of the price point and how it's facing off against the other cards. So I highly suggest you guys go for it, and you can buy it from online retailers like mdcomputers.com. I'm gonna leave a link in the description for that, and that is it. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please be sure to leave a like, do comment, and do subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.